Buongiorno, buonasera, benvenuti amici. Welcome, my friends. My name is Vincenzo and welcome to my channel. And yes, the channel is Fountain Pen Therapy. Now, another Chinese pen. Another clone. Another good clone. It's the sister or the brother or the younger brother of the Big Pen. Now this thing's been around for a while. It comes in different colors. I've kind of given it a little bit of a hack, and I'll explain that in a minute. And of course, this is the clone of the Pilot Custom Urushi, the big one, as I call it. And it was only a question of time before they would come up with its younger brother or younger sister, the custom Urushi 845 clone. And that's what I've got for you today. So, without further ado, Fountain Pen Therapy presents the Montefiore 845 clone. Be right back. Okay, so we're back with the pen. Here's the pen. I'm not going to bother you with the packaging. There was none. Bubble wrap. I think they're taking a little bit of advantage of us, with the price. Don't think this pen is worth the price they're selling it at. I've got to tell you right off the bat. However, it's an interesting proposition, and I'll explain to you when I get there, especially in the writing sample. It's this vermilion red. From what I understand, it is an exact, in terms of dimensions, an exact copy of the Pilot Custom Urushi 845. It doesn't have Pilot Custom on it. It has Montefiore. So unlike the beginnings of its older brother or bigger brother, if you will, this one here, it used to be known as the Big Pen. I've seen it also sold as Montefiore. Some people have suggested it's coming out of Jinao. I'm not sure. Certainly my version, and I've got it in several colors, doesn't have any branding of any sort. It just has the 3 stars, which kind of mimics the Pilot versions, the original versions. This one at least has the branding Montefiore. It has the 3 stars. In the description on AliExpress with CD 845, so it gets you to believe that it's the smaller version. Now, it's very interesting because it gives you, finial, fairly simple. Here you have it. It's all metal. The clip is a big ball clip, similar to the Pilot. Now it opens up in, let's just open it up. 1, 1 1/4, 1 1/2, 1 3/4. So 1 3/4 to reveal a very generic, those generic nibs referred to as iridium point. We've seen those before. They've actually gotten better over time. I find they write much nicer now. I believe this is a medium, if I'm not mistaken. At least that's what I ordered. Cheap plastic feed. nothing of any importance. The pen is extremely comfortable. The weight of the, because it is metal, does not really affect you. And it gives you a very good idea of what the 845 would feel like. Now, keep in mind that the 845 is made out of ebonite, and so much, much lighter than this. Does this post? No, it doesn't. I thought maybe there would be, you would just have to kind of push it in. It doesn't post. Now, does the original post? The Big Brother post? Yes, it does. So the Big Brother does post. I mean, it makes it a big, heavy clunker, but it does post. The 845 version, for some reason, does not. Now, let's look at what's in there while we're at it. You can see there's a screw right at the end that probably holds that clip. There is a step down. See that step down? So I would suspect that this seals fairly well. Now, what is interesting about this pen is that I have removed, the first thing I did is I changed the nib. But before we do that, let me jump to just a short clip of a writing sample with that original nib that I had presented before. I think I presented it before during a recap. So why don't we cut there so you can see what the original nib in this pen writes like, and then we'll continue this review from there. So here you are. The nib in there is just a standard, iridium point Chinese nib, I believe. Nothing cheap feed. There's nothing special about this nib, but sometimes these nibs, they surprise us and they end up writing really well. So let's see. I've put in here Mahjong Red, this ink here. So let's see what gives. So this is the Montefiore, big, or we'll call it the custom Urushi 845 clone. The nib is a number 6 steel, I'll call it a generic nib. The ink, I forget the name of the ink, but it's essentially Mahjong Red. Now, gotta tell you, the pen doesn't skip a beat. It is a fine nib. It's stiff as a nail, but it's very wet. So it's wet, stiff, but very consistent, or as I like to mention it, or call it, constant. That's it. Does it have reverse writing? Yes, it does. I would say extra fine for reverse writing, but otherwise works well. Very comfortable. There you have it. So we're back. So you can see that the pen, with that original nib, writes fairly well. I no complaints there, except that what I find interesting is that we could replace this nib. Now, first of all, oh, by the way, it's a cartridge converter, nothing special there. This is a pretty standard nib. It comes off fairly easy. Here you go. Okay, so you can replace it with, for example, I've got here a Yowo, even though it's not the same feed as the Yowo feed. This is a Yowo. I bought this on Goulet Pens. 1.1 stub. If you can find we can line them up. Here we go. Let me just, as you can see, accommodates a Yowo nib. I've tried it with a Bexley nib. Yeah, here it is. This is a Bexley nib, which essentially is a broad Bach nib. Just let me position it properly. It should go. Here we go. So you can put a Bach nib in there as well. Okay. But what is interesting, and I won't do it again, but actually I will do it. I think I have to do it just to show you folks. Here is the Pilot Custom 823 nib, the number 15 size nib essentially, which is the nib that you'll find on the real version of this 845. I can't use the Pilot feed. It won't accommodate. But if I use this feed, there you go. So the 823 fits in very nicely. I mean, very nicely. You could see that there, if you look at the feed, there's a little bit of a difference. That's the feed from the 823, and here's the cheap plastic one. But having said that, if you're wondering whether or not you could put the real thing in there, yes, you can. Okay. Now, the other thing, the other option I was looking at is I've taken out the Pilot 15. Another nib that I wanted to try out is this Fountain Pen Revolution Flex nib, which I'm in love with. Not very expensive. I've been able to put them in several other pens. And the question I have is whether or not I could fit it in this pen, because that would be a nice thing if I could put in this pen a flex nib, so we could have some fun with it. Now, let me just see. Yeah, it fits. A little tight. Doesn't go all the way down. Well, there we go. Fits very nicely, actually. So you know what? We're going to ink up this pen with this flex nib and see what gives. See if it works properly. If not, I plan to put in either a Yowo, a 1.1 stub, or a Bexley broad, but either a stub or a broad in this pen, because I like to see that red ink nice and thick. So let me ink this baby up, and we'll do that in the writing sample. In the meantime, I'm just going to reassemble the pen and do some pen and size comparisons. Okay, I'm back with some pens. I picked some of the red pens that I have in my collection. I have my Dieman, I believe. Whoops, sorry about that. That's the N12. I keep forgetting. No, this is the N1. So we've got the N1. This is a Mike Green pen. Mike Green is the one that was able to create this section out of ebonite for this clone to accommodate number 8 Jinao nib. So it makes the pen a lot lighter, and 2, now I've got a number 8 size nib on this giant. That's that same Mike Green. I will leave his site on the in the description. So that's one of his pens. This is the Bexley Prometheus. This is, I think, the Dieman N8. Sorry about that. Hard to keep up with all these numbers. This is the Majon V60, the imitation of the Omas. And this is the subject pen. So you could see that, it's a fairly large pen. the 845, as you can see here. So accommodates really nicely. Now, what does it look like uncapped? We won't do the post-it because it doesn't post. I've left, by the way, I've left the nib, the Fountain Pen Revolution nib in that pen because it's fairly, I would say, the same size as the standard nib that the pen came with. That's one of the reasons why I think the price is a little bit too much. It doesn't offer any nib. By the way, I did also try, let me just line these up properly. Here we go. I did try with this pen, I also tried a lemon nib, and it fitted fairly well. So any number, I've got a feeling that any standard number 6 size nib will fit very nicely. But there you have it. By the way, this is how it compares to the original A23, if you will. There you have it. So the 845 is a little bit bigger than the 823. So there you have it. And we won't do the posted comparison because there's no point. This pen doesn't post. So I'll put up some dimensions and then we can have some fun with those nibs. Okay, I'm back for the writing sample. What I wanted to show you is this was the original custom Marucci 845 writing sample or 845 clone that I just showed you a little bit earlier on. And you can see the pen wrote fairly well, a nice red ink. This is the Montefiore custom Marucci 845 clone with the pilot number 15, and it's abroad. So as you can see, it works fairly well. This is the Montefiore 845 clone with the Mayora broad nib, which was essentially a branded Yowo nib. It wrote a little bit funny, so I was wondering if the nib was damaged, but it gave a nice line. Then this is the Montefiore with the lemon nib, as you could see. Wrote a little bit lighter and less pronounced, but nonetheless, this is the Montefiore 845. This was with the Bexley nib, or do I have that on the next page? No, here it is. This is the Montefiore 845 clone with the Bexley nib. I put it back in the Mayora nib. I tried to repair it. Then it just wrote a little bit lighter for some reason. I didn't like it. This is the Montefiore with the 845 clone with the Yowo 1.1 stub, and I compared it to the Asvine C2000, and it was just as nice. So there you have it. So you can see it. I played around with it. I have not, however, tried this pen with that nib, which is the Fountain Pen Revolution stub nib. So what we'll do is we'll ink this sucker up with that nib and be right back with some paper. Okay, so I'm back. I've inked this ink, or this pen with Majon Red. I find this red ink to be just such an expressive, deep red. It's become quickly my favorite red ink. With red inks, I've had the experience that they kind of they become crusty after a while of non-use. I want to see if this ink has the same reaction. For example, ox blood, which I find very similar to this, or writer's blood. After a while, the nib kind of crusts up on me. There's kind of a chemical reaction that I can't explain. I'm going to figure out if this ink does the same thing, because I came to the conclusion that all red inks have that kind of property, but so far this ink doesn't. But I'm going to give it more of a testing before I pronounce myself on that. So that's the ink. Now, what I'll do is I'll keep using this. This is a Tomo River notebook, so I could just continue my experiment with the different nibs on this pen. It'll keep it all in the same place. Now we'll see if this writes. Now this is a flex nib, so it could be a little testy. Sometimes they, let me just close up a little bit. Here we go. As you know, flex nibs have a tendency to be fussy. So this is the, so far so good, Montefiore 845 clone. Wow. So far, really nice. The nib was replaced with FPR Ultra Flex, and it's an extra fine Ultra Flex. The ink is Majon. I don't know if you guys can appreciate this, but this red ink is fabulous. Majon Red, I'll call it for, whoa, it just stalled on me. That feed may not, yeah. What happened here? I had to prime it offline or off camera. Yeah, so you can see it's a little lighter because I dipped it in water. There may be a problem. In other words, that feed may not be able to keep it up. Needless to say, it's very wet. To the extent that it lasts. As you can see, it's a little lighter. So it's maybe it's the water that's in the feed now that's writing more than anything else. But, which would be a real shame. Yeah. As you could see, it runs out. And that feed just doesn't keep up. Doesn't keep up with this pen. We would need its original feed, which is a ebonite feed. So I'm going to go off camera again. I'm going to try to see if I can find a solution. Okay, after a lot of experimentation, I can't get that flex nib to go in there. The good news is that I realize that the section of this standard generic section is similar, if not identical, to the Kegeloo nibs, which I think are fabulous. So what we're going to do, folks, is we're going to install a Kegeloo nib on this thing and see how it works. I haven't tried that one. And Kegeloo nibs are one of my favorites, so I'm not compromising one bit. Just I would have loved to have had a flex nib, but you know, you can't. So here it is. So we're just going to prime it and then do some writing. Okay, so I'm back. I've primed it, and it looks exactly the same. So we'll see if this thing writes now. So this is the Montefiore. Wow, look at this, folks. Look at this gusher. See how darker it is? Montefiore 845 clone. This is almost with a Kegeloo number 6 steel nib, which in my estimation writes like a double broad. And it is one of the smoothest gushers that I have. You can find these nibs, by the way, on AliExpress. So it's not as if they are, you know, special to any pen. You can buy them separately, and they fit in any Yowo or Bach section, I would say to you. So you know what? We're going to keep the Kegeloo nib on this thing. That's perfect for me. It's just, Would have loved to have been able to play with the flex, but not everything's possible. By the way, let me just get off camera here. That's the beauty of, for some of the beginners, of Chinese pens. You know, you can switch nibs, experiment, see what fits, see what doesn't fit, and you're not compromising. Now, let me tell you, I was a little bit weary about taking my 823, my custom Pilot 823, and playing around with the nib. I did it anyway, carefully, but you know, you can't start fooling around with nibs that cost you $300-400. But with Chinese nibs, you can do almost anything. And if it fits, it fits. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You've got all these sections, and it teaches you. You know, you get to learn, you get to know what a box section looks like, a Chinese generic section like this Kegeloo one, or a Yowo. So it's a lot of fun, folks. So this review is a lot more than just this clone, right? In any event, I hope you enjoyed that. So we'll keep the Kegeloo one on this one. I still think it's a fun pen. And you look, I know I'm going to get comments about, wow, you're encouraging clones, etc. Look, it is what it is, okay? I'm not going to get into that. I think it's a nice pen. It's vermilion red. It's going to get me to use red pens. And you know what? Why not? Why not? Please subscribe. Enjoy the channel. I've got plenty of reviews for you beginners. And for you, the old-time viewers, I hope you've enjoyed that. Enjoy your summer. Enjoy your pens. See you sometime soon.